All right, ladies and gents, let's do some mass marketable, amazing content that'll get us billions of subscribers and get us out of the depths of obscurity. It's a tier list of all the new units. Jokes aside, I mean, it is going to be a useful tier list for people who are hopping in day one and want to know where things are standing. These are just my opinions, and they're very multiplayer focused. For campaign, I don't know, man. Most of the units are going to be fine. Any unit's fine in campaign. You can just buff the shit out of it with all your red line trees and technologies. It'll be fine. This is for multiplayer. Land battles, how strong I think something will be. B is, let's give the scale. B is like perfectly balanced, good in some matchups, bad in others. No things about it. A is you're probably going to want to take this in most matchups, and S is you should take this in every single matchup all the time. C, on the other end of the spectrum, is it's useful in a couple matchups, but overall could use some buffs. And D is I wouldn't take this unless you're memeing, right? So that's where we're at with the scale there. Let's hop right into it. So this will be every lord and hero and everything. The exalted, not exalted, the Lord of Chaos Lord of Nurgle. He's solidly B tier. I'll start him off here. Not a lot of fluff about him. It's just a armored melee lord who can be pretty cheap if you cut him down to size, but has some good supportive items. He's solid, fine, no real issues with him. So yeah, just good. Kazik, the Befouled. I'm gonna put him in C or D. The problem with him is he's too expensive. He is a good like duelist hero guy, and that's fine. But Nurgle doesn't really need more of those. Oh, that's another thing. I'm thinking about them also in comparison to their roster, right? So for Nurgle, I don't think you'll see this guy in a lot of matchups. He might make it into a couple, but really high price point, and his charge that looks so cool on paper, the befouled charge or whatever that can get rid of charge defense versus large. He has to kind of be in front of or next to the cavalry that's charging, and he has to be really close to them to get it to proc in time to get rid of the charge defense. So he usually ends up messing up the charge he's a part of, where like if he hits first, then the cavalry will hit him and not the enemy. So it just kind of like it's a cool idea, but it doesn't really work in practice. So yeah, he's just a duelist and he's pretty expensive. Sorcerer Hero of Nurgle is A tier for that roster. You will see it in most matchups. Unless you're going to see like Kugath Plaguefather or someone who's already a caster. But with Tarmacon coming in who's not a caster, and like the Warriors of Chaos roster in mind too, the Exalted caster hero guy of Nurgle is just really good. All the Chaos Sorcerers are. So he is going to get much love. Very strong unit. Demon Slayer, the new dwarf generic lord. D tier, and we'll get to that later, but D tier. Just awful. He's like a combat lord that's kind of supposed to he's bringing some buffs, but that makes him not as good at combat, but he's not also that good at buffs. He's just mid. He doesn't have armor piercing, he doesn't have anti-large. He's just kind of around. Yeah, I have nothing nice to say about him, which is why he's in D tier. He's just kind of bad. Gargrim, legendary hero of the dwarves. I want to put him in B. Maybe A. Yeah, I'll put him in A. Gargrim's great. No complaints. He has a cool spinny spin move that can get him out of some danger, which is good. Clear out the front line. He has some good buffs and abilities from being a legendary hero, so I actually do think we'll see him in a good number of matchups. I'm a little cautious of being excited about him because I feel like he's going to contribute to Hero Hammer. I think him and then the Dragon Slayer, though that's spoilers, I do think we'll get a lot of Thoric double Slayer hero, and it'll be the Dragon Slayer and Gargrim. So, bad for the meta maybe, but he will be good. Dragon Slayer, I'm going to put him in B because he's not as flexible as Gargrim is, but the Dragon Slayer is better than the Demon Slayer, even though the Demon Slayer is a lord and he's a hero, because the Dragon Slayer gets armor piercing and anti-large, which is just like better. I don't know, because none of the Slayers really would just want to sit in infantry, and Gargrim at least has a spin to get him out of infantry, but at least this guy is like, listen, if you get him a fight, he's going to take it and he's going to win it, whereas the Lord, more of a mixed bag. So, Demon Slayer, B, middle of the road. You can take him, and that's fine. You can also not take him. You're not trolling. Oh, the Master Engineer Lord of the Empire. This is hard. I'll go with B. It's B leaning on C, but I'll put it in B. It's like B minus. His grenade launcher's fine. It's not very good. It's not very bad. He'll get slow damage over the course of the game. He can defend himself okay. His steam tank mount is good, but a little spency, and then you need to take caster probably to support him. But he's like fine. That's a bunch of negative stuff. It does. His grenade launcher eventually gets value. His pigeon bomb, it has an extremely long wind up time. But if someone's not expecting it, you can get a gross amount of damage on like an infantry unit or something. So yeah, he's not bad. He's B. But again, I'd put him like bottom of B. Bruckner. Oh boy. I'll go with B because he has an amulet that is absolutely broken and stupid and ridiculous. But that's the only nice thing I have to say about him. That like the amulet's an S tier, but he himself is pretty whatever. So they kind of even out to B. He's a good, strong duelist hero. He has a lot of really good buffs, all that stuff, but he suffers from being a duelist hero. He's very expensive, and he doesn't even fill your Lord slot, which means as a Lord, you're either going to get Gelt or Elspeth. Those are your only two caster options with him. So there's no life caster for him, unless you want to go a Lord, Bruckner, and a life caster. So he's an unsupported duelist hero on a roster that really doesn't duel much. And that's like, some people are going to argue, and you could be right, this is just my opinion. Some people are going to argue it's like, well, he fills that niche for them. There's niche, and then there's like gaping hole, and the Empire isn't really good at supporting duelists. It's not really their thing. They kind of mostly want to kite away or stay in their box or something. So, I don't know. I don't think he has a great place on the roster, but again, that item of his is so strong that he evens out to be. But if the Empire had a life lord, or he was a lord and they could take a life mage, then I'd be much more positive on him. But the fact that he's in the hero slot makes this really tricky. Engineer hero, I could do A. He has restock, which is huge for the Sunmaker, the Empire's super crazy OP ROR Hellstorm Rocket Battery, and then it can be okay with like War Wagon Kite or something of that nature. So restock is always useful. And then he himself is like a single entity War Wagon. He just rides around on his horse, has 360 shooting with good armor piercing missiles, and then he's not pathetic in melee. He's just kind of bad in melee. So he's A tier. I could see some engineer use. I guess by the criteria of this is like he'd be a B because the start I was like you'll see him in some matchups, not some other ones, and A tier is like you'll see him in most matchups. But I feel like the matchups where you take him, he's going to be really, really good. So I bumped him up to A. But yeah, he's good. I put him at the bottom of these two right now. I guess I should be ordering these. And so far, I actually do think the order is correct. But I will be ordering these. Left is the strongest of a category. Like, if I'm doing that, then I'll do this. I do think the Dragon Slayer is a little stronger than Nurgle guy. Elspeth! A tier. Yes, the pictures aren't all the same size. I had to take from various sources. Elspeth. A tier. Not S. On her dragon is very powerful, but it's also crazy expensive, and she has limited healing. She has 2 casts of like this Spirit Leech that also heals her, but it heals her for a max 20% of her HP between the two of them. So it's 10% and 10%. That's not a lot of healing for a 3,000 plus gold Dragon Lord. And her stats kind of are more like the Dark Elf Sorceress on her dragon, the Black Dragon. So she's not an amazing melee combatant. She's serviceable. She's fine, especially for a caster. But she's not incredible at dueling. And then it's like, well, do you take a life caster or do you just have a death caster, with no healing support? But she has some really strong items. Her dragon mount is strong if she decides to take it despite the expense. Or you can just do what I've been doing and take her as a horse death caster for the Empire. And therefore, she is A tier. She's pretty solid. I really don't think she's going to be ridiculously OP, but I'm ready to be wrong on that. Malachi! I'm going to put him in C, but at C above Kari. I just looked his name up before this because I wanted to get it right, and it's gone. It's gone from my brain. Anyway, Malachi, he's weird. He's weird. I can't explain to you why he's kind of weird. his weapon strength is really really high for his missile strength. Sorry, it's like you can get up to 2,000, and it feels like it'd be insane. And then I was trying to show a video of it being insane versus Tarmakhan, and it just like didn't do very much. He shot him for quite a long time, and every shot did, I don't know, like something like 150 damage or something. I'm making this number up, but bear with me. And it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe the weapon strike's over a 10-second period. And then over a 10-second period, he got like 450 damage off out of 2,000. So I'm like, does Tarmakhan have 80% hidden missile resist? So then when I was trying to make a video talking about Malachi sucking, I just had him shoot at a land ship for a while, and he deleted the land ship. So it just kind of, it's weird. Some single entities he does amazing damage versus, some he just doesn't. I tried it versus various ones, and I got mixed results. So I'm putting him in C. He's useful. He'll be useful in some matchups. He's okay. And he has healing for the Thunder Barge, which we'll get to, but I strongly suspect that in most multiplayer events, the Thunder Barge is going to be banned. So I don't really want to give him credit for buffing something that's probably going to be banned. So that's my reason for putting him in C. If you disagree, again, you can mentally bump him up, but without the Thunder Barge, he's C. With the Thunder Barge, if it's allowed, then he's probably A, because you can just heal the best fucking unit in the game, but we'll get to that. Tarmakhan, B. Ahead of Bruckner, ahead of the Master Engineer, behind the Chaos Lord. These two could go either way, but I'm going to leave him behind the Chaos Lord. Tarmakhan's B. He's very, very, very expensive on his Toad Dragon, and he's not a caster. So then you have to tack on a hero, which, hey, our hero's up in A tier. But anyway, you have to tack on a hero. It's still rough to pay that kind of price for a Lord, and he doesn't have a lot of self-healing, which I'm glad about. There's way too much healing out there, but it does count against him on a tier list. He doesn't have too much self-healing. He has his Feast of the Maggot Lord, which is really, really strong. But it's not that strong of a heal, it's just a strong ability, and only procs when he's about to die anyway. So it's still good. Like, and I have a different video talking about that probably comes out before this one. But still, it's hard to justify such a expensive melee lord. And when he's not on his Toad Dragon, he's pretty okay in melee, but nothing special, nothing to write home again about. Again, he's in B. It's not like I'm saying he's bad, he's just fine, which is okay. Frankly, this distribution of the DLC so far gives me a lot of hope about DLCs, because normally CA DLCs, not to be a dick, but most of them are over the S and A tier, and they need to get nerfed 6 or 7 times. Looking at you, Shadows of Change. So, yeah, he's well balanced. He'll be useful in some matchups for sure. I just don't think he's going to, like, ruin everybody's life. Epidemus, probably D tier. I think in the game in general, he would be a C tier Lord, but I'm putting him down to D tier because he has some anti-synergy with his own demonic units, so his kit just isn't very well balanced around that. And also, he's on the Nurgle roster, which has some of the best Lords in the game. Like, Nurgle's roster is D tier, in my opinion, right now, before the DLC, and it's heavily carried by a bunch of really good Lords, and you're getting 2 more Lords that are up in the B tier, so Epidemus just falls flat, where it's like, okay, considering the roster he's on, there's no reason to ever bring him. Like, there's other people who are just better. Toad Dragon, I'm going to put it in C behind this guy. Toad Dragon's alright. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's amazing. Its problem entirely suffers from the fact that it's on the Nurgle roster. And that is, it's weak to all the same shit Nurgle's usually weak to. People are going to bring a lot of shooting, people are going to bring cheap spears, and people are going to bring anti-healing. And the Toad Dragon doesn't really like any of that, so it's just going to get pin cushioned and killed. It's low armor value and meh missile resistance. Me and basic archers are going to take their day out on this poor guy. But, like, he is gorgeous. And he's not bad. I think you'll see him in some matchups. Basically, matchups where the enemy doesn't have cheap archers that they can swarm him with. So, like, Chaos Dwarves, he could be okay. Because they have, like, guns, but, you know, only so many of them. Bile Trolls! A or B, but I feel like we haven't had enough A's. So I'm going to put them in A, ahead of the Engineer, behind Gargrim. Bile Trolls have a really high weapon strength. They're a troll unit, their leadership's low, all that other garbage you're used to, but trolls in general are pretty good, and Bile Trolls bring more to the plate than some other trolls do. Comparing them to Stone Trolls would be tough. I don't know who would win in that comparison, but the fact that I'm saying I don't know which is better between a stone troll and a bile troll should give you an idea of why I think they're so strong. They're just hardy, good frontline breakers, good lads. Plague ogres. So I believe this is the great weapon. The great weapon goes in B. Head of Tarmacon. Head of this. There we go. Yeah, that's about right. Plague ogres with great weapons with their anti-large and armor piercing, they provide something Nurgle has needed in, I mean, anti-large at all, armor piercing at all, but also a monstrous infantry frontline. They bring a lot of what Nurgle wants to the table. The only reason they're not in A or even S is their high price point, and something about them just feels a little off, and I can't fully put down what it is. But the those are small complaints compared to what it brings, and Nurgle desperately needs them. So I think B tier. You'll see them in matchups where he needs strong anti-large and strong armor piercing, or trying to pull off like a well-defined rush, and you won't see him against factions that might have more mobility or cheap range and stuff. So it's mixed, but like the great weapon variant is B. The non-great weapon variant I put in C. They get anti-infantry, which is pretty whatever, but after that they're just prohibitively expensive and pretty lackluster to bring armor-piercing anti-infantry, which we'll get to, but that's not something Nurgle really struggles with, so they're just kind of doing what Nurgle already does a little bit worse. They're not terrible. Again, C tier doesn't mean you'll never see them. Just a couple matchups, like maybe dwarves? Dwarves, Chaos Dwarves? I can't think of anything else you'd really want to invest 1,300 gold in an anti-infantry monster? Monstrous infantry? I don't know. But the biggest problem is right here for them, Pestigors. I put Pestigors in the A tier, ahead of the Engineer. Pestigors, on their stat line, they don't look that incredible, but Nurgle has a couple ways of getting them some more melee attack, and oh boy, do they fuck up armored units. I took them versus Dwarves of Tactical Lich and then did some testing with like Chaos Dwarves and Warriors of Chaos. Yes, if you get them versus an armored infantry, they will do amazing and they will pay for themselves. If you throw them at random chaff, sure, they're going to suck, but that's you using them wrong. That's not them being a bad unit. Pestigors have pleasantly surprised me. They're very strong, even though they're kind of a lock and key type of unit. You need to be facing what they want to face, but man, if you get them in the right situation, Pestigors can do a lot of work for you for only 650 gold. I like them a ton. While Zongors of Tzeentch are more generalist and good in different situations, I could see the Beastmen occasionally bringing these Pestigors, and Nurgle will definitely take them. I think Nurgle will take Pestigors in pretty much every matchup, at least one or two. Rot Knights, also going to put them in A tier. I will put them ahead of the Bile Trolls and the Pestigors, because Rot Knights just don't have the weaknesses Trolls can have and Pestigors can have. But they're good. They're solid. They still have a decent amount of armor. They're not super heavily armored, but they have a decent amount. Anti-large, armor piercing. They respond well. They're pretty expensive. That's their only downside. So you'll probably see like one per matchup. But I do expect to see them in literally every matchup. They're good. No real complaints. Steam Tank Volley Gun. C tier. Ahead of the Plague Ogres, behind the Toad Dragon. Steam Tanks are good. This one suffers from its cousin being better. The generic Steam Tank, I think, is a better unit. I've only seen this in 3 games of practicing on the DLC patch, so I'm ready to be wrong. All of these are just my hot takes. But the Steam Tank felt off. When it was in Melee, it wasn't shooting nearly as much as the Cannon version was. And the Cannon version was just more reliable. In Melee, they're both the exact same, so why wouldn't you just take the Cannon version? They're the same cost, so why wouldn't you just take the Cannon version? I don't know. So he felt jankier than the Cannon one, and why bother? Landship. I'll put the Landship in A. Ahead of the Engineer, ahead of Pestigors, ahead of Trolls, ahead of Rot Knights. I'm thinking about this as I go along. Ahead of Gargrim, beneath these two. Alright, Landship feels ridiculous, gets a ton of damage, swooshes through some things like nobody's business, but it is very weak to ranged fire, armor-piercing ranged fire, and artillery. It's super expensive. I don't know. It's still an A tier, so it's very, very strong. I just think you do need to be careful about getting it into a bad situation, and then it just gets clowned on and you wasted your time and money. But it is strong. It does a lot of damage from all directions, and it's very easy to use. So Yeah, it's up there in A tier. I don't think that one will be banned. We'll talk about the Thunder Barge. Ironsides, D tier. They're garbage. They have less damage output than handgunners, less damage output than Hawkwind long rifles, shorter range than I believe either of them. All for some armor stats. Oh boy, they're bad. They're bad. I put them below Epidemus. I think they're trash. Hawkwind long rifles, A. Ahead of Bile Trolls, behind the Rot Knights. Hawkwind long rifles are good. They're just like Giselles. They're just like Crane Gunners. They don't have the pierce that the Crane Gunners and Giselles have. They don't hit multiple models, but like they're really consistent damage against skirmish cav, heavy cav, single entities, artillery, enemy archers. Like they're just solid, very strong units. We'll probably see at least like one of in most matchups. Knights of the Black Rose. B ahead of this guy, so while I shift them all down. Knights of the Black Rose, again, it's another unit that's just solid. There's not a lot of sexy things to talk about. It's like not armor piercing, not doesn't have self-healing, nothing crazy, but there's also nothing wrong with it. ITP, high stats for a high price point. They're good, solid. Empire heavy cav. And how many more are left? Oh, okay, a couple. I thought this was the piece of lizard stats. Thunderbarge is S tier. Thunderbarge is the most broken thing I've ever seen in my entire life, and I'm gonna ban it from my tournaments if I have any say on the matter. I fucking hate it. It's garbage. It's shit. If you counter it, like you can bring a ton of armor-piercing missiles and artillery, sure you can do well, but in most matchups, this thing is going to steamroll its way through everybody. It's insane, it's stupid, it's awful. It has really good single-entity damage with its front-mounted cannons and a one-time use spear that can half-health Karl Franz on his grip, on his demigriff. It's fucked. It's stupid. It's awful. I hate it. I hate it so much. Thunderers with Grudge Rakers, I'm putting them ahead of the Ironsides. Nah, I'll put them in C. Behind the Plague Ogres, though. They're just bad. I don't know why. Their unit card looks fine, but in practice, the Grudge Raker Thunderers, like, they do less damage than the regular Thunderers for more money at shorter range. They just seem to, like, maybe miss a lot? I don't know. They're Chaos Dwarf Blunderbusses, but without the oomph. So they're just kind of meh. They look cool. That's about all I can say about them. Slayer Pirates! A. Behind Hawkland Rifles, ahead of Trolls and Pestigores. Slayer Pirates are good. They have an extremely low price point. I think they're only $750 for a solid melee combatant with decent poke that's annoying to deal with as the enemy. They're short range, you know, and $750 I guess isn't anything to sneeze at. So they're strong. I think you'll see at least like one or two in every matchup, but they won't be oppressive. I don't think people even really care about the Slayer Pirates too much. Doomseekers! C, but ahead of you fucks. So C, but right behind this guy. Doomseekers are meh. They're so expensive. And they have this spin that looks cool on paper, but it takes forever to charge up. You have to be in melee for a minute and a half for it to charge up, and by then most of your Doomseekers are already dead. Then they do like a cool little spinny thing. They're an anti-infantry armor-piercing Slayer unit, which is just so niche. Like, people are going to throw chaff at them and slowly grind them down with worthless peons. But they're not terrible. You might see them in some matchups where you expect like a ton of heavy infantry spam, like Chaos Warriors of blank. So you might see it versus Khorne, Slaanesh, Nurgle, things like that. But their high price point and extreme niche factor make me put them down in C. And last, the Goblin Hewer. I'll put it in B behind Bruckner. It's silly, but it's easily countered by archers or enemy artillery. But if someone gets close enough to it, it does insane damage, and then the crew is all Slayers, so they can fight pretty darn well. So it's fine. It's B. I don't think it'll be meta-defining by any means, but it's also not a troll unit. And there you go. There's your tier list of all the new units coming out. Abuse the Thunderbarge in quick battle while you can, because fuck that thing, and I hate it, and there's a reason I hate quick battles. Goodbye, everybody. Subscribe, yes, yes.